Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Patriot Nation TV. I'm your host, Tim Davis, your New Age Patriot with a 1776 attitude. Just one man, one opinion. Trying to make sense of it all and connecting the dots. It is Tuesday, June 3rd. It's Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I really wasn't expecting to do a video tonight because I was prepping and preparing for episode 2 of a 3-part series I'm doing on Nazism. Did Nazis lose, or did they simply move to America? I did a show on that a couple of days ago on Operation Paperclip. A few days ago. So I was just doing a little research to get episode 2 going, along with the Second Amendment and these tyrants in Congress, these tyrants in governorships and states. So I was actually preparing for 2 shows I was going to do later on in the week. But what brings me to this show, Tuesday, was the fact that I came across a couple of news feeds on my social media. By the way, I'm still in Facebook jail. Again, like 2 days ago. But anyway, censorship is real. Shadow banning is real. It's a fight for our freedoms, our liberty. It's a fight for our soul. It's a fight for everything. So what happened was, a few articles appeared in my news feed. I follow some boring stuff that the average person doesn't follow, won't get news feeds on. And it brings me to a news feed that came again across again in my news feed was Joe the Tyrant Biden's proposal of 4 extra years of schooling from pre-K through 12 in college. And it leads me to this little show I'm doing tonight. I don't know. I gotta do it. It's on my mind. I really gotta do it. And so let's get really to it. So President Joe Biden, back in April, and it was back in April he brought it up, and he confirmed it a couple weeks ago that he's proposing 4 extra years of schooling, pre-K through 12, pre-K through, what do you call it, education 17, bachelor's, associate, whatever you want to call it. But what I'm noticing is there's a fight back. What we see as parents or grandparents or step-parents, we are seeing parents waking up all across America. And we're seeing it in PTA meetings, school board meetings. And we're seeing the argument of mask removal and stopping the critical race theory, 1619, Project 1619, and many, many more. Also, we are seeing great patriots who are in government, such as Governor DeSantis of Florida, Governor Abbott of Texas. They are promoting and passing laws to end this foolishness. Critical race theory, and so on and so on. So one of the articles I came across today was interesting. It's about public education, fascism, and totalitarianism, etc., etc. So let's get to the point of this. These governors and these constitutional conservatives that are in the House of Representatives, they are promoting and trying to pass laws to end this foolishness. Public education is in fact following the Mussolini doctrine of fascism. One simple example is the 1619 Project. I'm going to dive into that. Also, the indoctrination centers that we call public education is totalitarianism. And there are 4 gods of the public education system. Yes, a statist, the public teachers unions, the progressive liberals. They believe in this collectivism of it takes a village, and they are erasing. They are erasing, and they are also promoting individualism as a negative thought process. So this brings me to what I want to talk about. A couple things, like I said, the 1619 Project, indoctrination, falsehoods and error, and totalitarianism, a blueprint of Mussolini's fascism. Even Hitler followed this blueprint. So let's ask ourselves a couple simple questions. And these simple questions: what does school really teach us? What does school really teach children? I'm going to break it down to 5 things what one man, one opinion, thinks what school really teaches children in 2021, 2009, 2010, 2001, 1995, 1987. 1. 5 things of 1. 1 of 5 things. Truth comes from authority. 2. Intelligence is the ability to remember and repeat. 3. Accurate memory and repetition are rewarded. 4. Non-compliance and question everything, the critical thinker, is punished. 5. Conformity. Conform intellectually and socially. This is what schools really teach children. We're on like three generations of this. Now, as a strong person who reads a lot, sure, I'm not educated at all these scholars and master's degrees and PhDs, but I do read. I have common sense. Thank God I have common sense. Blue collar worker, construction worker in New York City. But I do read. And it brings me to I've always said in the past, anything written past the 1940s, maybe early 1950s, like 52, 53, is garbage. It's falsehoods and error. It's indoctrination. And this brings me to one of the authors I'm very fond of. She's a woman. She's a woman of color. She's like in a category of like Ayn Rand and people like that. She's an individualism. She believes in individualism and she's an individualist who believes in liberty. And her name is Isabel Patterson. She wrote a book, I believe it was in, I do have the book. I'm trying to look at my little library. I do have the book. But if you don't have it, you can always download it or read it yourself. Go to Barnes & Noble, pick it up. It's like $10. Isabel Patterson. She wrote a book in, I believe, 1943. And it was named The God of the Machine. That's what she named it. And I'm going to take a little phrase out of it from the book The God of the Machine by Isabel Patterson. She wrote this in her book. Attacks supported compulsory educational system is a complete model of the totalitarian state. There can be no greater stretch of arbitrary power than it is required to seize children from their parents. Teach them whatever the authorities decree, they shall be taught. And expropriate from their parents the funds to pay for this procedure. Hence 1978, Jimmy Carter, the creation of the Department of Education. And as I was saying previously, that any book written past the 1940s, maybe 1953, the latest, if you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. That's it. There is no creative minds, no individualism. You become a robot. You become a ward of the state. So I'll repeat that. If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. Anybody else is a conspiracy theorist. Me, I'm Generation X. I'm the first generation that's growing up in this world. Post-Jim Crow, post-segregation, and so on and so on. We were the beginning stages of dumbing down of America in indoctrination centers. So I want to include my generation, but I'm not going to include it. So I'm going to include the last two, going on 3. In only 2 generations, government schools have succeeded in getting American children to turn their backs on everything they know to be true, and making them believe everything they know couldn't possibly be true. Worst case scenario, we, the parents or the grandparents, meekly allowed it to happen to them. Yes, we did. So this brings me to one of the articles that came across my news feeds earlier today. The 4 gods, because totalitarianism is collectivism. It strips everybody of their individualism, and they make government your god. They get away with your religion. They do away with it. So what are the 4 gods of public education? 1 is the god of economic utility. 2 is the god of consumership. 3, the god of technology. And 4, the god of multiculturalism. Those are the 4. So I'm going to break them all down one by one. 1, the god of economic utility. In the eyes of most people, America's public education system is the secular alternative to religious faith-based schools, private schools. But as one man, one opinion, and others have argued, this is false. It's a falsehood, and in many errors. The public education system also promotes a kind of religion, statism. Statism is a religion. which has its own creed, rituals, and gods. And in his book, I'm going to quote an NYU professor, one of the articles that came across my thing today. I didn't read his book. I don't own it, but I skim read it. In his book, The End of Education, Redefining the Value of Schools, was authored by a former NYU professor, Neil Postman. And he names these 4 gods that he believes America's children are being taught to worship within the walls of today's public schools. And as I said, there's 4 of them. And they are: 1, the God of economic utility. As Postman describes this God as follows: as in its name suggests, it is a passionate God, cold, severe, but makes a promise, and not a trivial one. Addressing the young, it offers a covenant of sorts with them. If you will pay attention in school and do your homework and score well on tests and behave yourselves, you will be rewarded with a well-paying job when you are done. It is driving an idea. Its driving idea is that the purpose of schooling is to prepare children for competent entry into economic life of a community. It takes a village. It follows from this that any school activity not designed to further this end is seen as a frill or an ornament, which is to say, a waste of valuable time. Let me go further into it. To see evidence of this existence, of this God, this false God, totalitarianism, government, one need go no further than what the U.S. Department of Education defines as the goal of America's educational system. And their goal is this: to make students college and career ready. 2, the God of consumership. According to Postman, the push to make students career ready is closely tied to a materialistic worldview. It is implied that today's students should want successful jobs so they can live a comfortable existence in modern society. The God of economic utility is coupled with another God. And I want to refer here to the God of consumership, whose basic moral axiom is expressed with the slogan: whoever dies with the most toys wins. That is to say, goodness inheres in those who buy things, evil in those who do not. And this brings me to the third God of education, the God of technology. Postman writes, nowhere do you find more enthusiasm for the God of technology than amongst educators. In describing this God, Postman clarifies that he is not against using technology in schools. What he is against, he writes, is our sleepwalking attitudes towards it. Against allowing it to distract us from more important things. Against making a god of it. In other words, what he is against is facile, overly opportunistic view towards technology that you find amongst certain educators today, who assume that simply providing children with iPads and laptops will create more interest in studies. and removes some of the discipline and hard work that has traditionally accompanied the learning process. And the fourth God, the God of multiculturalism. Before describing the God of multiculturalism, Postman differentiates from cultural pluralism, which he understands to be the educational philosophy that shows the young how their tribal identities and narratives fit into a more inclusive and comprehensive American story. Postman has a sympathetic view towards including elements of cultural pluralism in school curriculum. He regards multiculturalism, on the other hand, as a psychopathic version of cultural pluralism and describes it as follows. To multiculturalisms or multiculturalists, oppression is the key to understand white history, literature, art, and most everything else of European origin. It follows from this that all narratives of the white European races are to be seen as propagandists, means of concealing their evil, or even worse, making their evil appear virtuous. There is no possibility of proceeding in a fair-minded way. The multiculturalists believe unless the narrative of white European are overthrown. The Middle Ages is today popularity regarded as the most religious period in the history of Christian civilization. It has been remarked that the typical man of that age did not really spend time questioning the existence of Trinitarian God, the Holy Trinity. Instead, he took that God's existence as given axiom that permeated his life. So now I will now turn back to our time and the gods of the public education system that Postman names. One man, one opinion. In my experiences, the typical man today does not question the validity of at least 3 of these gods, and more often than then, not willingly accepts all 4. These gods become axioms of modern education, which, by the way, significantly diverge from the educational philosophy that prevailed in the West for over 2,000 years in modern life. Test scores and the rise of remedial education in college reveal that America's public education system may no longer be effective at teaching students the basics. But I would argue that it is still an effective cachet for its gods. We must remember, a generation taught to hate our country will refuse to defend it. And, you gotta say to yourself, people, this is what it is. And I guess this is going to bring me to my next topic. I mean, I'm going on 25 minutes while I'm going long on this one. Caught me off guard. To the more indoctrination, the 1619 Project, and its falsehoods and error, and the liberalism and everything else. The 1619 Project learns from Mussolini. Yes, Mussolini, the fascist dictator from Italy. Contrary to what many think, fascism is not based on the belief of absolute truth. Fascism is based on the belief that there is no truth. That is, on relativism. This position is actually built on fatal contradiction. A relativist says there is no truth, but in doing so, he is asserting a truth which then becomes the basis of what he intends to impose on everybody else. Everybody else has been so polite as to let the relativists go on instead of pointing out that they are proceeding from a premise that contradicts their own premise, and therefore they don't deserve to be listened to it or be listened to. But that's where we are and where we've been for some time in a realistic postmodern worldview. This brings me to the 1619 Project. We're seeing it all over the news, how fake it is, and so on and so on. So this takes me to the 1619 Project, which was a group of essays pushing the thesis that American ideals were false. And when they were written, and that the American Revolution was fought to protect and perpetuate slavery. All falsehoods and error. You got prominent historians, both liberals and conservatives alike, including historians like Gordon Wood, James McPherson, James Oakes, Victoria Bynum, Claiborne Carson, Alan Gulzo, Sean Welts, and many more have enumerated that many factual errors in the essays, including the 1619 Project of the National Association of Scholars. Yet, the lead essayist, Nicole Hannah-Jones, has responded mainly by mocking the idea of objective history altogether. As when she tweeted the irony. She tweets, laugh out loud. Right. Because white historians have produced truly objective history. She and her defenders fall back on the idea that they are offering different interpretations or reframing of facts, or that they simply generate debate. I think my point was that history was not objective. She has said. And that people who write history are not simply objective arbiters of facts. And that white scholars are no more objective than any other scholars. And that they can object to the framing, and we can object to their framing as well. This is what was being taught in the 1916 or the 1619 Project. This can fairly be described as a fascist attitude. As Benito Mussolini helpfully explained, and I'm quoting him, if relativism signifies contempt for fixed categories, and men who claim to be the bearers of an objective, immoral truth, then there's nothing more relativistic than fascists' attitudes and activity. From the fact that all ideologies are of equal value, that all ideologies are mere fictions, the modern relativists infers that everybody has the right to create for himself or herself his own ideology and to attempt to enforce it with the energy of which it is capable. That's Mussolini. That's what he wrote back in the 1920s. The historians today who protest 1619, however, resist the framing idea and take issue with the project's clear misrepresentation of well-established facts. These errors and falsehoods which concern major events cannot be described as interpretation or framing. Some of them declared in an open letter. They are matters of verifiable fact, which are foundations of both honest scholarship and honest journalism. They suggest a displacement of historical understanding by ideology. Sweeping aside such objections, Hannah Jones is energetically enforcing her interpretations as Benito Mussolini directed. In her case, with the help of institutions that have also been corrupted by ideological thinking, such as the New York Times, the Pulitzer Committee, and the public school system that teach 1619 curricula designed K through 12. Pardon me, I'm a little parched. I'm going on this almost 31 minutes. I didn't expect that. Sweeping aside subjections, as like I said earlier, Hannah Jones, while the historians were waiting for some accountability, Hannah Jones won another award. Hannah Jones won journalism's highest honor, the Pulitzer Prize. Her prize was commentary, not history. Her opinion, not history. Was that a backhanded way for the Pulitzer Committee to admit that the 1619 Project cannot be dignified as history? I don't know. But if that is so, why have professional educators accepted curricula based on the 1619 Project for teaching in public schools despite it being faulted by experts and scholars and exposed mainly as ideological? An opinion. My opinion, your opinion, anybody else's opinion. Which is the worst wound inflicted on the body political by the 1619 Project. The original compiling of a malicious pack of falsehoods and error about our country's founding, snubbing the demand of historical accuracy, by extension rebuffing any concept of reason, deliberation as a basis of common life. Which is the worst inflicted on the body politic by the 1619 Project. Well, we just see so many governors rejecting it now and writing law. The original compiling of malicious pack of falsehoods and error about our country's founding, snubbing the demand of historical accuracy, and by extension rebuffing any concept, reason, deliberation as the basis of common life, piping this poison into our schools, goading children through misinformation to hate their country, encouraging minority children to hate their white classmates and white children to hate themselves. Seeing Hannah Jones award the Pulitzer without any effort on her part to correct her work, correct her falsehoods and error, using white guilt, which I have none, and none of you guys should have any, but using white guilt to extort reparations. Hannah Jones has said, when my editor asked me, like, what is your ultimate goal for the project? And she says this, my ultimate goal is that there will be a reparation bill passed. Reparations. That's silliness. Now, the reparation bill will be passed. I write to try to get liberal white people, Malcolm X talked about it back in the 60s. Let me reiterate it. My ultimate goal is that there'll be a reparation bill passed. I write to get liberal white people to do what they say they believe in. I'm making a moral argument. What she believes is moral. Collectivism. Not what we believe, what I believe, you believe. We all have different moral arguments. And that's her moral argument based on falsehoods and error. And she also continues with saying, my method is guilt. She's trying to guilt people into things. So basically, the 1619 Project, which has been proven, it's all over the news, is a genuine and instructive exercise in the fascist attitudes and activities Mussolini described. And Hitler described it also. How a false ideology created by modern relativists can be advanced by force of the will and contempt for truth on a populace deprived of reason. That's fascism. It's force. It's force. Propaganda, falsehoods, and error. It brings me to an old meme. You see a stewardess holding things up from China, Venezuela, Cuba. If you hate capitalism, hate racists, ask about your discount rates to the Sudan or to China or Venezuela. And, that's just basically my little rant. I can't believe I'm on this 38 minutes and 2 seconds. So I'm going to sign out. I did not expect to do this video, but I just came across a couple articles I read about, and I had to talk about it. So I guess I'm going to tune in. I'm going to tune out. I guess in my left-hand corner, I'll talk about the college racket. If you missed that video, I'm going to post in my left-hand corner the college racket. Maybe I'll post something in my right-hand corner about virtues and stuff like that with education. So if you enjoyed this video, everybody, please hit like, hit subscribe. Please leave a comment if you're a follower, if you're new. Like I said, I was preparing to do episode 2 of my Nazism. Did the Nazis lose or did they move to America? And I will be posting that video probably in a day or two. So again, if you guys tuned in, please hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what you want to talk about. And I'm going to sign out, guys. I'm on 39 minutes and 7 seconds. Sorry about a little slurring. I had a crown break, so I had to get to the dentist today. So I'm going to tune out, everybody. I'm going to say God bless you, God bless America. I'll talk to you guys soon. Stay tuned. God bless. Bye-bye.